Welcome to Move Conversations. In this episode, we talk to Ms. Preeti Shridhar. She's a senior public official and community leader in Seattle area in USA. We are just few weeks from the 2020 US presidential elections. The main theme, keeping it with the times, for today is what it takes to run for local elections in the USA. Ms. Preeti ran for office twice in recent years. Before we begin, full disclosure, Preeti and my co-producer Mrigank were classmates in the top-ranking specialized business school in India, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Preeti, welcome to Move Conversations.
Thank you, Venkat. It's wonderful to see you. And hello, Mrigank in the background.
So, we will have two parts to this discussion. First, we would, be focusing on, your background and then, what it takes to run in local elections. And later we will talk about the new social trends that you observe in the socio-political trends that you observe in the Indian community. So in the first part, let's begin with what brought you to the USA.
So Mrigank, after we graduated from IIFT, I was, looking to launch my career in India. I did get a job soon after. I worked with HCL, the Hindustan Computers Limited. Interestingly, even though the Indian economy had opened up to women in management, it was still very slow. If you remember, we few women in the IIFT class held a very, very, kind of coveted position because we were a handful and the rest of you were all guys. And I remember even as I was interviewing for jobs, even, large corporations like Ponds India told me, you can get a job, but you need an MBA in finance because we don't give the jobs in marketing to women. So I really came to the US to pursue an MBA and an MBA in finance. I got a scholarship. And so I decided that I would, get that one little thing that was missing in my resume to get an MBA degree in finance. And that is what brought me here. I will say that even before doing that, I did break some boundaries because my one-year internship with HCL was a first because I was the first woman who was a management intern selling or working in the marketing department to work in their Busy Bee sector with what was then called MS-DOS.
Right.
I don't know if anyone remembers that anymore.
Right. Awesome. So, since then, you moved and it was very interesting to see that you worked for a long time with the government or public service in the USA. So what has been that experience like? Right? What kind of jobs did you do over the years in the US public service?
Great. I love the fact that you use the word jobs because I think to me that's really been what's been most exciting in my life and my journey. My first opportunity was private sector. I had the singular pleasure of working in Manhattan, downtown Manhattan, a few blocks from the Empire State Building. But then very soon after, as soon as I moved to Seattle, it's been public sector, and I really like to say public service. I really cherish my work there. I've had a whole lot of different opportunities and careers. And firstly, what I like to say is that, there is a stereotype that one thinks of when you think of government. You think of slow, you think of these old, boring, I think the word slow,
Mm-hmm.
boring,
Mm-hmm.
and where nothing moves and nothing happens
Mm-hmm.
are kind of the images that come to your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have to say is the jobs I have done
Mm-hmm.
have been the most exciting and the most life changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done things. I mean, I'll get to the big picture in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
But my jobs have been so exciting. I've been on the media. I've
Mm-hmm.
brought film festivals to the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've been on crime scenes.
Wow.
You know, so when I think of I would come home every day from work and I wouldn't stop talking, and my eyes would light up and say, you know what I did today? I spoke to the kid who was on American Idol. You
Wow.
know, I was there when, I spoke to a celebrity who was on a film festival.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
made a decision that would get people 10 years of water. So,
Right.
so I will say that, I was in a parade,
Uh-huh.
so jobs is a nice way of saying it, but I think what's kind of beyond that, what's been really great is when you're in the public sector, first of all, you are accountable
Right.
and you are measuring what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the difference that you make to people and the community, and the impact of what you do is long term.
Right.
And then so your entire focus on things is very different.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were now going to say, well, you started saying marketing and finance, and where is all that?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of an aha moment for me, because firstly, let me tell you, I never liked finance. I hated
Okay.
finance.
So did you go there because Ponds recommended that will be the job you can get as a
Yes.
woman at
And
that time?
so when I started doing finance in my MBA, I found that what I really liked was marketing.
Sure.
And I found myself doing a few extra courses in marketing and getting a minor in marketing.
I must confess that, like, last thing you looked like in our class was a finance person. So
I
I
know,
was
I know.
surprised
Yeah,
that
I just,
you specialize in
yeah,
finance, right?
yeah. I think I liked the finance professor, but I did not like in fact, I really liked, those days Philip Kotler was like the guru of marketing, and I learned his book Upside Down, Inside Out. And then what was very interesting when I got into the public sector and the world of environmental and social marketing
Mm-hmm.
was this very interesting idea of, when marketing is all about behavior change and consumer marketing is about how you get people to change behavior to buy
Right.
what you want,
Right.
and social marketing is about telling people how to not consume excess.
Right. Right.
And that was kind of the field I found myself getting into.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, Preeti, I remember you mentioning that you wrote a chapter in Philip Kotler's book, didn't you not?
Yes,
Did you not?
yes, I did. Yes, I did. So that was
Wonderful.
obviously a crowning glory for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can only dream of, right?
Yes. So those were my jobs that, like I said, that I got to do. But really, all that went on to some kind of really amazing moments where, from in the public sector, I got to specialize a lot in the environment, and so some of my really wonderful moments were when I was in Seattle. We've all heard about the former Vice President Al Gore
Mm-hmm.
and his movie An Inconvenient Truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had the privilege of bringing him to Seattle to launch his premiere presentation of the movie before it was a movie, when it was the
Wow.
slideshow
Mm-hmm.
with Laurie David. And so we brought that to Seattle, and we launched the Seattle Climate Protection Initiative.
Mm,
This was during the George Bush administration when the US would not sign on to the Kyoto Protocol.
correct.
And so that was my, work with the former mayor of Seattle. And from something as amazing as that to a few years before that, really teaching the community how to recycle, and conservation programs here. And then I've done consulting work to with Jordan and India on water and environmental programs. And then some of my most recent work, which I find very, very critical and important, is the work on social justice, race, and especially with work related to the African American community and public safety and police.
Mm-hmm.
And it's work that I'm continuing to do because it's it's really something that is at the core of what's happening, in America today with government policies and issues.
So you have been always been, particular and keen about social issues, ecological issues, community issues, and so on. So it comes now as a, not a surprise that you are interested in, serving the public, not only from as a public servant, but also as a, in public offices, if there are elected offices. But, talking of elected public offices, to me as an outsider, it appears that it's somewhat unique in the USA, that there is a whole bunch of top public offices. I mean, the ones that we hear about are those of, public prosecutors and, in your case, we heard about port commissioners and so on, to which people are elected to. That's not common in, many countries. Tell us what offices in the US, maybe cities and states, are typically elected positions. I mean, we are everywhere in the world, or like most countries of the world, mayors and governors are elected officers. But leaving aside those, what in other places we think is a, career bureaucrat's job becomes a elected office in the USA.
So there are many offices. At the same time, I will also say that not a lot of them get the same um, eh, recognition, and nor do they get the same interest level as the usual suspects.
Okay.
Basically, any position that is either that has control over taxpayer dollars,
Mm-hmm.
or has to make decisions that involve public decision making.
Right.
So it could be a school board,
Right.
because those are oftentimes, the public schools are using public funds. They might be funded by property taxes. It could be, there are water commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really interesting because, we all take water for granted, but at the same time, it is such a critical, basic, public amenity. And there are
Right.
decisions made for, I think in India sometimes, in fact, there was a movie a long time ago in Tamil Nadu called Tannir Tannir,
Right.
which was about, basic, water
Exactly.
resource. So the water commissioners, fire district commissioners, like you said, attorney generals, prosecutors, local judges, a lot of these positions are elected office.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
addition, of course, to the state legislators who are both House representatives and, senators, and then council, city council members, and mayors. So
Right.
there's a lot of different offices that come up for election.
Very interesting. I mean, it's something that outside of USA, in most countries, we don't, or we are not aware of.
Right.
So, coming to
One
your experience, you ran twice for Seattle Port Commissioner's job. Um, why that position? What motivated you?
Very interesting. So in Seattle, the port commissioner's position manages the Seattle airport. the Seattle port and the cruise terminal. And it's a very, very important position. The operating budget of the port is almost $1 billion. It's not quite, but almost $1 billion. The Port of Seattle is 107 years old. The Seattle airport, the SeaTac airport, is the 8th busiest airport in the country. And yet this position, this commission, and all these facts are almost invisible. Almost nobody knows about it. In this, over 100-year history, there have been only 5 women who have served as port commission, no women of color. And like I said, it's something that's kind of invisible. Almost no one knows about it. And there's hardly any attention given to this, this position. What got me interested is it's almost like a headline story. So what happened was on January 27th, 2017, because of the Syria crisis, the federal government, President Donald Trump, he signed an executive order banning 7 predominantly Muslim countries from flying into the US.
True.
And as a result of this executive order, there were several repercussions. There were huge impacts, economic impacts, impacts to families, and among a variety of things that happened, people who couldn't get back, people who were stranded, even people with green cards who had, who were suddenly couldn't go back home, couldn't see their families.
True.
But on a very, very basic level, the impact to our community here in Seattle was huge.
Right.
Emirates, which is one of our, signature airlines that operates out of SeaTac.
Right.
Not to mention that for the Indian community, Emirates being a very important airline because it's a hub that takes us to Dubai and then to Bombay and every other place. They had to cancel one of their flights, daily flights. So the impact of that was huge. Seattle's Attorney General, a gentleman called Bob Ferguson, he sued the federal government on behalf of not just Seattle, but all the attorneys, saying, this is wrong. You cannot do that.
Right.
And that same day, there was actually a huge protest at SeaTac. And soon after that, there's a sequence of events, but soon after that, there was actually a port commissioner who decided not to seek re-election.
Okay.
And I said then, for all these other reasons I also just mentioned to you about the impact of the port, I said, I never really had any interest in running for politics because I don't need a, strobe light on my face. But for these other reasons, I said, someone needs to take action. And even though this is not necessarily a very, a seat that gets attention, it has impact.
Right.
And I'm going to run.
Right. So when you announced that you're going to run, how did your family react? And what was the, experience of running for an election in the USA like?
So my family is a very interesting family. My family is here in the US. My immediate family is here in the US. That said, I am a single mother. And I've faced some of those challenges, as an individual. So my family is liberal. They are very, they've been very supportive. But in some ways, they're not kind of, they're conservative in sense of they don't want a lot of attention.
True.
And so, and they realize that standing for office, you're kind of standing there asking for trouble. And
and spotlight.
And the spotlight. So there was a little bit of, are you sure you want to do this? You already have a 50-hour work week, but we'll support you. You know, so that was really the reaction. They knew that I'm the one who always stands up,
Mm-hmm.
but they were there to support me, but they wanted to caution me, saying, are you sure you've already taken up so much, you've got a
Right,
kid, is this
right,
what you want to do?
right, right. So what, I guess you have to raise money to contest an election. So what was that experience, raising money, campaigning? How easy was it, or how difficult was it to, raise money as an immigrant, or a naturalized American, as a woman of color? So, there are multiple issues to contesting an election, public, for a public office anywhere in the world, and definitely in the USA.
That was is the hardest part.
Right.
Several parts of that. I mean, and you really hit the nail on the head. First of all, the people uh, who have been here, um, they who have the family support, the generations of support. They have. It's much easier for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
The South Asian Indian community is more likely to give for charitable causes, especially for
mm-hmm.
charitable causes in India.
Right.
The village that needs help. Um, I, you know, I don't have that base, so
Mm-hmm,
it was
mm-hmm,
much harder.
mm.
Um, and I don't have that personality to go out there and say, hey, give me money. It was not a visible race. It's important, but nobody knew about it.
Right.
It was not a partisan race, so much more difficult to get people excited, saying, let's get the other side. There really
Right.
wasn't another side.
Right.
And then on top of it all, I was facing, the same time I had other races where there were other Indian women,
Mm-hmm.
where they were very highly contested other races.
Right.
First time in the history of the Washington state that you were going to flip the Senate.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it was like, we'd love to give, but we have to give, we have only so much we have to give the other person, because that's a
Uh,
critical race in the history of our state. So
right.
it was difficult.
Yeah, it was absolutely.
Yeah, very challenging.
Absolutely.
What was my dream? Not to be stuck in an arranged marriage, but to get a scholarship and to come to America. I found my dream in King County, where I raised my son and worked for the public for 27 years. I launched Seattle's Climate Protection Initiative with Al Gore. My dream is to make the port a world leader and protect its environment. Please vote for me, Preeti for Port, and let's protect what we love about our home.
Paid for by Preeti for Port.
Preeti, you just mentioned that, when you ran for office, there were other women of South Asian origin, right, who also ran for other offices in your area. So I guess this was 2017, right, when there were 7 other women of South Asian origin, and they ran for different offices in the Seattle area. What was the response of the local community like, right? Did they have heavy turnouts? What happened? I mean, give us a sense of how does it work and what happens?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was actually, I would say, mixed. So for example, one of the women who was running at that time is, pretty well known.
Mm-hmm.
She is a South Asian Indian council member in Seattle. And at that time, actually, there was a very controversial issue on the under discussion. It was this person was trying to change the minimum wage for workers to a
Okay.
$15 minimum wage.
Oh yeah,
And
Seattle was one of the first to do it, if not the first, right?
yes, it was. And the person has a lot of people who, either are followers or immensely dislike her.
Oh, okay.
So, and, unfortunately for members of the community, all Indians look alike.
Mm-hmm.
So I was accosted twice during
Okay.
the race. Once at a parking lot at a grocery store, and once at a cafe when I was, sitting with my campaign manager. So was with potential bodily harm.
Oh my
So
God.
that was scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As I mentioned to you, there was also, this whole challenge with just trying to differentiate myself with potential donors and getting money.
Right.
On the other hand, there was also, I would say, this great opportunity because suddenly there was this coming together of the community. I found myself getting attention, being called for events. I think one thing that was fantastic that happened, it actually happened later on, but there was a traveling exhibit of the Smithsonian that came to Seattle. And I got a centerpiece, exhibit and naming and recognition of that.
Right.
So, I think in many ways there were both good things and bad things that happened from, I won't call the bad thing, I won't take that seriously, but
Right.
I definitely think that overall it's been, wonderful that so many of us, took the opportunity and, and ran for office.
So that would mean that like you would have got support from, across people from different segments of the of the Seattle area, right? King
Absolutely.
County, where you are from, right?
Absolutely. And then the other thing I do want to say is that mine was the only race amongst all the races that was across the county.
Right.
Some of the other women who ran, even the congresswoman who ran,
Right.
were smaller districts. So mine was the one race that was much larger in scope. So that was also pretty wonderful.
So do these elections have heavy turnouts, or people don't pay much attention? How does it work?
Percentage, the primaries usually have less turnout.
Understandable.
And but I got 100, almost, I think it was like 99,000 votes for my 2017 race.
Wow.
So that was pretty good.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
It's really, really awesome. So you did mention that your position and the contest was not along party lines while some of the others were there. So I think that was also reflected in what I saw, your debate that you had. I saw the clipping of that on local Fox channels, and looked very civil to me. So, pretty unlike what we see, in the 2016 or 2020 presidential elections. So how does that happen? I mean, that America also exists for us. Let us know.
So my 2017 campaign was very civil. In fact, the person with whom I made it to the primary, he termed me his co-candidate,
Wow.
which was, we were on very friendly terms. And as it happened, it was, like I said, nonpartisan. And we both shared very many of the same values.
I noticed that.
And,
Yeah.
I think we had slight differences in approaches, slight differences in priorities. I think, I had a very strong game plan. I was very strong on environment and in inclusion and equity. And he had a slightly different approach on some of those issues.
Right.
So yes, it was a more civil campaign. 2019 was a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it can happen that way. There are local races that are not that civil, that can be, negative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very glad. I still actually have fond memories of my 2017 campaign.
Right.
Obviously, if they are on partisan lines, they can be ugly, they can be
Right.
negative.
Right.
And
How was 2019?
2019 was not my favorite experience.
Okay.
The reason it was not my favorite experience was it was politics played.
Okay.
And it had
Sad.
almost nothing to do with me.
Mm.
It was politics that were played due to other players and other races.
Okay. Okay.
The other thing that was for me very interesting in 2019 was it was a reflection of what we're seeing today
Okay.
in the in our in our greater community.
Right. Right.
There was a big change in what we're seeing with our public.
Okay.
There was a lot of impatience in our community, and I have to say, rightly so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think our public is demanding answers.
Right. Right.
But in some ways, because of that, there's an impatience. And some of that is because, as elected officials, we haven't delivered.
Right. Right.
And
But
so,
one thing I noticed that like you got endorsement support from different mayors of your city, neighboring cities, sports stars endorsing you. So
yes,
so you're a celebrity there, right?
yes, I thank you. But it comes down to, like I said, we have a smaller turnout for the primary elections. We do have, I think, a small group of people who are, they want answers, and they want answers today. There's an impatience in our community.
Right.
I mean, look at our elections. We have so many people who supported Hillary Clinton. She did not win. We had so many people who supported Bernie Sanders. He did not win. So there is a polarization in our community. I had many supporters, but at the same time, it was a surprise,
Right.
It was hard to take the fact. There were some switches in decisions. But at the same time, when I think about it, I think the port is going through a hard time. There were some very, very serious decisions that, were facing the port, not to mention the fact that today it's even more complicated with COVID, with the cruise industry stopping, with the airline industry coming to a standstill,
Right.
with restaurants all coming to a standstill. And all these are impacting the port in very, very huge ways.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. We get that. Right. That's a, nice place where we could end the first part of the conversation, and, we would, kind of some of the things that you mentioned also leads us to the next part, which we, on the how the Indian community has been a community under transformation over many decades, and we would talk about that in the next segment. So, viewers, don't go away. We'll be back in a minute with part 2.